Hey gang, in that last video I was talking about functions and I want to just emphasize one thing I said, and I hope I emphasized it in the last video. Functions do things. Functions take data and transform it. Now the fundamental way that we store data in JavaScript is actually in a thing called an object. We looked at variables before. So we could have a constant of like a number. We'll set that to pi. But when we start to want to organize our data, the fundamental data type for organizing our data is called an object. And we'll look at arrays in the next video. Arrays are actually a type of object. But objects are basically, you can see there's these curly braces, and they're basically collections of key value pairs. So we can, for instance, let's change this from something so bland. Let's make it a ball. And this ball is going to have a color, and the value of this color is going to be get random color. So I'm just going to grab that function that hopefully you also have in your library of functions now. I just always keep it around. I know where it is. I keep it close at hand because I can always get a color with that. And then we're going to give it an x. And the x will be, let's make it a math.random times 400. So we can use that math.random. You see it's giving me a little red squiggly here. Always pay attention to those because I forgot a comma. So an object is a collection of key value pairs that has commas between them. And you can see they're in purple here. And for my y value, I'm going to get also a math.random. So now I've got this ball that's got a random color. It's got an x value and a y value. And we could also give it a size, but let's not do that for now. So we got this ball, and we can also add functions to this. So we could have a say hi. That would be a function that does something. So this is not a function. It is a function, but it's the return value of this function. This one is a function that's part of this object. And this idea of having a function that's part of an object is actually a really powerful one. And it's one that leads to something called a class construction. Now, a class is basically a cookie cutter for objects. A class is a way to construct objects. A class is, you can think of it as like the emblematic version of this thing. So I can take all this stuff that I've used to write this ball, and there's a couple of different ways to make another ball. One way to write another ball is to go just like this. So we'll call this ball 1, and we'll call this ball 2. And, let's say I want to add something here, like, move. And if I wanted to change this x, right, that would actually not be possible here from this function. I wouldn't have access to these properties, which is another reason why this class construction is so useful. But let's say I wanted to update this and give it like a size, right? And again, we'll make this be like math.random. But you can see that if I've made like 20 of these using this structure like this, I've got to go in and update each one of these. Whereas if I use this class construction to create my ball instead, I just have to change it here. And I'm going to show you what I mean by that. So we're going to, instead of having just these keys here, I'm going to write a function called a constructor. And a constructor is a thing that will build an object. It's a function that will build an object. So this class ball is actually a function that's going to return an object. And I'll show you how we do that. So we're going to pass in some values, an x and a y, and yeah, we'll just pass in an x and a y. And let's pass in an x and a y and a color. And we'll say in here, we'll say this dot x equals x, this dot y equals y, and this dot color equals color. So we've got, again, this function, this constructor function that's going to take in 3 values and reassign them to the scope inside this ball function thing, weird thing. And what's really neat is this function weird class construction thing can also have something called a method. And this method could take in a value, and it could say this dot x plus val. But you know what? Since we've got an x and a y, let's actually do it like this dot y. And we'll just say plus equals, which is a way to add the incoming value to the, so we can say val.x, val.y. And now, what is this dot notation that we're seeing again and again? So the dot notation is a way to access properties on a ball. And if we, before we go in here, actually, we could say console.log ball1.x, ball2.x. And you know what, just for the fun of it, let's console.log ball1 and ball2. And we'll just see what that looks like in the browser. And if I can find, that is my cool title piece. So we can see ball1 is this. It's got a color and an x and a y. And it's got a method called say hi. And this ball2 is similar. Now ball1.x is this? Yes. Ball2.x is this? Yes. So we see we access the properties and, in fact, methods of classes by using this dot notation. And it's every time you see this dot, that's what's happening. So we can access dot say hi. Let's look at say hi, and we'll see that's a function that returns this value. So we can see that value. And so when we're using math.floor, we're actually using a method, just like this say hi method, that's stored on this math object. Now this math is actually a class, like here, ball. And so this move function is a method of this ball. This move function, since it's a method of this ball, it has access to these properties of this ball, which is really, really helpful. And I'm going to show you now how we can invoke this ball class to create us these balls from up above. So we'll just say const ball1 equals new ball. And so new ball, we're going to pass in, let's pass in this x value. Let's pass in the same y value. And we'll pass in the return value of getRandomColor. And we can now make ball2 the same way. Now, if we console.log, am I logging anything to the console? I guess not. We'll console.log ball1 and ball2. And we see we get something really similar, except now it's this ball, right? So it's an object with a capital B. It's got these properties, and it's got this move method. So it's got a constructor function. Now we can call the move method on ball1. Let's say ball1.move, and you can see ball1.move, it's going to take in an object because we're going to look for an x value and a y value. So I'm going to give it an x of 200 and a y of negative 200. And we'll console.log ball1 and ball2, and we'll see we just moved only ball1. We didn't move ball2 at all, but we did move ball1 successfully. And this is really, really important. This is called object-oriented programming. It's just a first little dash towards it, but it's an important thing, I think, to understand because it helps you understand that math.floor is a method of the math library. ToString, this is a method of a number. So this whole thing is returning a number, and this number has methods on it, like ToString. And now that we've converted it to a string, we can use the string library that's got a method called padStart. And you can see it saying there string.padStart. This one's going to say number.toString. And this one is math.random. So that's a nice thing about VS Code is if you hover over these things, you can see the API for using this, for using JavaScript. And we'll get that with the console.log. Log is a method of the console. So there's a lot more to say about object-oriented programming and objects, and we're going to be getting into that pretty heavily as we start to make games. But I think this is enough for now just to see this syntax and understand it. In the next video, I'm going to actually use this syntax. We're going to create arrays of balls, and I want to talk about the relationship between objects and balls.